Nevada isn't just casinos, sagebrush, and Area 51. It's mummies older than the pyramids, dinosaur shrimp waking up after decades, singing sand dunes, nuclear craters, and a mountain range locals literally call Nevada's Alps. This is 50 amazing Nevada facts that sound made up, but are 100% true. If you only know Nevada as Vegas plus desert, this video is going to completely rewrite your mental map. From ancient lakes that once turned the whole state into an inland sea, to a single dune that's home to its own butterfly species, we're going to count down from 50 to 1. And the number one fact will change the way you think about human history in North America. 50. Nevada's inland ocean that refuses to die. Thousands of years ago, most of northwestern Nevada sat at the bottom of ancient Lake Lahontan, a freshwater inland sea bigger than today's Lake Ontario. As the Ice Age ended, the climate dried out and the lake shrank into a handful of survivors like Pyramid Lake, Walker Lake, and the Black Rock Desert Playa. After big winters, that dry playa where Burning Man happens can briefly refill into a shallow, miles-wide lake, giving you a modern glimpse of that vanished sea. Locals will tell you, one year you're biking through dust, the next, you'd need a kayak to cross the same spot. 49. The desert that hatches dinosaur shrimp. When heavy rain hits the Black Rock Desert, the mud comes to life. Buried in the dust are tiny, ancient-looking crustaceans, fairy shrimp and triops, nicknamed dinosaur shrimp, whose eggs can survive dry for years. Once water pools up, they hatch, swim, breed, lay new eggs. And then the playa dries, and everything disappears again, waiting for the next storm. So yes, Nevada has a desert where prehistoric-looking creatures literally wake up from the mud every time it rains. 48. The cave carved by a prehistoric lake. Just east of Fallon, Hidden Cave sits above the modern desert, but the cave itself was carved around 21,000 years ago by waves from that same Ice Age Lake Lahontan. For thousands of years, indigenous people used it not as a home, but as a storage unit, stashing tools, food, and supplies deep inside like an ancient desert locker. Guided tours today walk you into a cave that records both geology and human life stacked in layers. 47. America's oldest rock art may be here. On boulders along the dried bed of Winnemucca Lake, near Pyramid Lake, researchers dated petroglyphs between 10,500 and 14,800 years old, the oldest known rock carvings in North America. The lake is bone dry now, but those ancient artists carved deep geometric patterns and tree-like shapes into limestone when this was lake shore. Today, you're standing in the middle of a desert, reading messages someone scratched into rock before the last ice age fully ended. 46. Nevada's mummy older than the pyramids. Just outside Fallon, in Spirit Cave, archaeologists found a naturally mummified person dated to about 10,600 years old. For a long time, the oldest known mummy in North America. To put that in perspective, this person lived more than 5,000 years before the Great Pyramid of Giza. Today, the remains are under the stewardship of the Fallon Paiute Shoshone tribe, and they're a powerful reminder that Nevada's human story runs unimaginably deep. 45. A cave full of Ice Age sloths near Las Vegas. East of Las Vegas, Gypsum Cave doesn't just hold human history. It held giant ground sloths. Excavations uncovered dung and bones, showing that Shasta ground sloths lived there until around 11,000 BC, alongside early humans. According to evolutionary theory, these massive plant eaters were some of the last Ice Age megafauna in the region before changing climates and human pressures wiped them out. Today, you can stand where giant sloths and early Nevada residents once literally shared a cave. 44. Nevada is absolutely packed with caves. Nevada isn't just open sky. Beneath your feet, there's an estimated 30,000 caves, grottos, and alcoves all across the state. Everything from lava tubes to limestone caverns. Lehman Caves in Great Basin National Park alone has about 2 miles of known passage and over 300 unique cave shield formations, making it one of the most decorated caves in the national park system. So if the surface feels empty, Remember, Nevada is just as wild underground. 43. A glacier hiding in America's driest state. Nevada is the driest state in the U.S., averaging roughly 10 inches of precipitation a year. And yet, high on Wheeler Peak in Great Basin National Park, there's a small but real alpine glacier tucked into a cirque at about 11,000 plus feet. Nevada's only glacier and one of the southernmost glaciers in the U.S. Locals sometimes joke it's Nevada's last iceberg, a stubborn souvenir from the Ice Age clinging on above the desert. 42. Trees older than most civilizations. On those same high peaks, Nevada's Great Basin bristlecone pines quietly rewrite what old means. Some in the region are known to reach ages over 4,000 years, and trees in Great Basin National Park are of similar mind-bending ages, growing since before many ancient kingdoms rose and fell. According to evolutionary theory, these trees survive so long by growing incredibly slowly in brutal conditions. Thin soils, freezing winds, and almost no competition. They're literally living timelines, one twisted pine ring at a time. 41. Nevada's Alps turn ruby red at sunset. East of Elko, the Ruby Mountains surge up out of the high desert like someone dropped a slice of the Swiss Alps into Nevada. Locals straight up call them Nevada's Alps, with peaks like Ruby Dome topping out around 11,387 feet. Glacial U-shaped valleys, alpine lakes, and waterfalls. They feel nothing like the stereotypes of the state. On the right evenings, the granite turns deep red in the alpenglow. That's where the Ruby name comes alive, especially for people in places like Spring Creek who see that show out their back window. 40. Where 95 degrees Fahrenheit days crash into 36 degrees Fahrenheit nights. That same region around Spring Creek sits at about 5,200 to 5,800 feet above sea level. High desert does something wild. It bleeds heat fast at night. It's totally normal here to get mid-90s in the afternoon and almost freezing temperatures before sunrise on the same day. That's the Nevada high country life. Scorching in a t-shirt at lunch, reaching for a beanie by midnight. 39. Nevada is a mountain state in disguise. Most people picture Nevada as flat desert, but the state is sliced into dozens upon dozens of north-south mountain ranges, part of what geologists call the Basin and Range Province. Each time the crust stretched, blocks of land tilted, one side up as mountains, one side down as valleys, like a stack of books being pulled apart. From the air, the state looks like a comb of parallel ranges and basins. That constant stretching is also why Nevada is so earthquake-prone. 38. The quake that cracked a highway. On May 15, 2020, a magnitude 6.5 earthquake struck the Monte Cristo Range west of Tonopah. It was the largest Nevada quake in 66 years, and it literally cracked U.S. Highway 95, closing the Vegas-Reno route while crews rushed to fill in the fresh fault scars. The shaking was felt from San Francisco to Salt Lake City, proof that Nevada's ground is still quietly rearranging itself. 37. Nevada's driest state, with 25,000 hidden springs. Here's the twist. Beneath those dry basins, ancient groundwater systems are doing their thing. Hydrologists estimate Nevada has more than 25,000 natural springs scattered across the state, from tiny seeps to full-on oases. Places like Ash Meadows are fed by fossil water that fell as snow and rain more than 10,000 years ago and has been slowly flowing underground ever since. According to hydrologic models, some of that water started its underground journey in mountains far to the north before finally popping up in the Nevada desert. 36. The world's most exclusive fish condo. Inside Devil's Hole, a water-filled limestone cavern in Ash Meadows, lives one of the rarest fish on Earth, the Devil's Hole pupfish. Its entire natural habitat is basically a shallow rock shelf about the size of a small bedroom, perched above a seemingly bottomless pool. Biologists, using evolutionary theory, think these fish adapted over thousands of years to scorching, low-oxygen water that would kill almost anything else. If any species ever needed do not disturb on its front door, it's this one. 35. Sand Mountain, the dune that sings. East of Fallon, Sand Mountain is a 2-mile-long, 600-foot-high dune made of sands blown out of the old Lahontan lake bed. Under the right conditions, when sand avalanches down its face, it emits a deep, humming, singing, or booming sound you can feel in your chest. Oh, and this dune has its own insect named after it, the Sand Mountain blue butterfly, which basically lives only on and around this single giant pile of sand. 34. Nevada's butterfly with a one-dune world. The Sand Mountain blue butterfly relies on just one plant, Kearney buckwheat, that grows on that dune. According to evolutionary theory, the species has specialized so tightly to this microhabitat that its entire future depends on one Nevada sandhill. It's the same wild pattern as the Devil's Hole pupfish. Tiny, isolated pockets of life hanging on in places you'd swear nothing could survive. 33. Tahoe, America's giant alpine bathtub. Lake Tahoe, shared by Nevada and California, is the largest alpine lake in North America by volume and the second deepest lake in the United States, after Oregon's Crater Lake, plunging to about 1,645 feet. That's enough water that if you somehow poured it onto flat ground, it could cover a large U.S. city in dozens of feet of water. And Nevada's East Shore throws in white sand coves and granite boulders that look more Caribbean than desert. 32. Pyramid Lake's Pelican City. Downstream of Tahoe on the Truckee River, the water ends its journey in Pyramid Lake, a remnant of Lake Lahontan. Out in the middle sits Anaho Island, a national wildlife refuge that hosts one of the largest American white pelican nesting colonies in the country. Thousands of huge birds using a desert island as their nursery. The public isn't allowed to land on the island, so the pelicans keep their rookery to themselves, cruising back and forth over turquoise water that used to be part of a continent-sized lake. 31. The river that refuses to meet the sea. Nevada's Humboldt River is the longest river entirely within the state, flowing roughly 290 miles from the East Humboldt Range out across northern Nevada. But instead of going to the ocean, it just stops. It ends in the Humboldt Sink, a terminal basin where water evaporates or soaks into the ground. If you straightened every meander, locals say you'd drive a few hundred miles, but the river's path would stretch much, much longer, like nature scribbled loops all across the map and never gave the river a way out. 30. The loneliest road in America is a Nevada flex. When Life magazine wrote in 1986 that U.S. Route 50 across Nevada was the loneliest road in America and basically advised people not to drive it, Nevada did the most Nevada thing ever. They turned that insult into marketing. Now you can get a loneliest road passport, collecting stamps in tiny towns along the way. Finish the trip, send it in, and the state sends you a certificate proving you survived a highway so empty it accidentally became famous. 29. The Pony Express blasted across this desert. For 18 wild months between 1860 and 1861, Pony Express riders hauled mail on horseback straight across Nevada's basins and ranges, changing horses every 10 to 15 miles at lonely stations from places like Fort Churchill all the way toward Utah. Imagine riding through a moonlit Nevada valley at full gallop, with nothing but a small leather mailbag and the knowledge that if you fell, your replacement might be hours behind. 28. Two towns still argue about being first. Ask Nevadans where the state's first permanent non-indigenous settlement was, and you might start a bar fight between Dayton and Genoa. Genoa, founded as a Mormon station in 1851, claims to be the first permanent settlement. Dayton counters that it was the earliest permanent mining camp tied to the Comstock lode, and that it functioned as a true town first. The only sure fact? Nevada's origin story comes with built-in small-town drama. 27. Nevada is basically renting its own land. Nearly 80% of Nevada's land is federally managed by the Bureau of Land Management, Forest Service, National Park Service, and others, the highest percentage of any state. That means when you're driving across those endless basins, you're mostly rolling through public land. It also means the state government often has to ask Washington for permission on big projects, like a homeowner who technically only owns 20% of their yard. 26. The ghost town with a beer bottle house. In the ghost town of Rhyolite, one miner took use what you've got to a new level in 1906. He built a house out of about 50,000 glass beer and liquor bottles, mortared together into translucent walls that catch the desert light like stained glass. It's one of the earliest extreme recycling houses in America, proof that Old West miners could turn their empties into architecture. If you're learning things about Nevada you've never heard before, hit that like button and subscribe to the World Blueprint. And drop a comment with a fact that surprised you most so far. All right, time to get into the really wild stuff. 25. Nevada, America's gold superpower. Nevada produces around 3/4 of all the gold mined in the United States. If it were its own country, it would rank among the top gold producers in the world, thanks to massive deposits like the Carlin Trend, one of Earth's largest known gold districts. That's why you'll hear locals joke that you can dig almost anywhere and find gold. It's not literally true, but geologically, Nevada is a gold powerhouse in a way that sounds fake until you see the numbers. In 2024, based on the actual gross proceeds reported to the Nevada Department of Taxation, gold and silver contributed over $8.4 billion to the state's total mineral value of approximately $10.1 billion, with gold typically being the largest portion. The average gold price was around $2,383 per troy ounce. 24. The silver strike that paid for a war. Before gold stole the spotlight, the Comstock lode near Virginia City was the first major silver ore discovery in U.S. history, discovered in 1859. The wealth pulled from those mines was so huge it helped finance the Union side of the Civil War and funded cutting-edge mine engineering. A boomtown exploded up a mountainside, complete with opera houses and some of the most advanced underground timbering tech of the era, all because someone dug into a weird blue mud that turned out to be ridiculously rich silver ore. 23. Nevada's official gemstone is literal fire. Up in far northwestern Nevada, Virgin Valley holds some of the world's best black fire opal. So special that Nevada made it the state's official precious gemstone in 1987. These opals flash neon reds, oranges, and greens inside jet black stone. At certain pay-to-dig sites, you can legally try your luck digging your own. It's one of the only places on Earth where finding world-class opals is a weekend hobby. 22. The river that mostly hides underground. The Amargosa River starts in Nevada and flows about 125 miles toward Death Valley, but you almost never see it. For most of its journey, it runs underground, only popping up at places like Ash Meadows and a few desert stretches before ending in California's Badwater Basin. It's basically a secret desert subway of water. One reason life can exist in some of the hottest, driest landscapes in North America. 21. Hoover Dam. The building of a titan. The construction of the Hoover Dam during the Great Depression was a story of monumental scale and human effort. The project required the immense weight of 45 million pounds of reinforcing steel and an additional 88 million pounds of plate steel and outlet pipes. In total, the dam contains 44,000 tons of steel pipe alone. Despite high unemployment across the country, a total of approximately 21,000 men worked on the project over its 5-year span. On any given day, the crew averaged about 3,500, with a maximum of 5,218 men on the payroll in June 1934. The contractors, 6 companies Inc., were awarded the job with a bid of nearly $49 million, an amount roughly equivalent to $760 million to $890 million today. This is based on dollar inflation, not the cost of today's construction and heightened safety requirements with extra environmental costs. The goal was to pour 3.25 million cubic yards of concrete, enough to pave a 2-lane highway from San Francisco to New York City. The entire dam was completed in just 5 years, 2 years ahead of schedule. The dam created Lake Mead, once the largest man-made reservoir in the U.S. by volume. At full pool, it held so much water you could submerge a major city under it. Today, dropping water levels expose the bathtub ring like a real-time graph of Western drought. 20. Legal brothels and the Mustang Ranch. Nevada is the only U.S. state where some counties allow legal, regulated brothels. Prostitution is banned in places like Las Vegas and Reno, but allowed in a patchwork of rural counties. The most famous was the Mustang Ranch near Reno, the first licensed brothel in the state. Its story includes tax scandals, federal seizure, and buildings literally being auctioned off and moved. Only in Nevada do you get a brothel so famous it becomes a historical case study. 19. Nevada's wild horses still roam free. Drive long enough on some Nevada back roads and you'll see bands of wild Mustangs, descendants of horses brought by Europeans that went feral centuries ago. They're controversial. Ranchers, wildlife managers, and advocates all have opinions, but there's no denying the image. A dust trail on the horizon, manes blowing, herds cutting across basin floors with snow-tipped mountains behind them. It's like the Old West refuses to fully leave. 18. Nevada's Alps have Himalayan snowcocks. Back to the rubies for a second. They're so rugged that in the 1960s, hunters introduced Himalayan snowcocks, yes, birds from the actual Himalayas, as a game species. Now, if you're hiking high ridges in the Ruby Mountains, you might hear the call of a bird whose relatives evolved on cliffs in Pakistan and Nepal, but whose modern cousins have carved out a life on Nevada's Alps, according to evolutionary theory. 17. One of the most remote towns in the lower 48. In northeastern Nevada, Jarbidge sits tucked in mountains so rugged that getting there feels like time travel. Dirt roads, deep snow in winter, and very few services. It's often called one of the most remote towns in the contiguous U.S. It also claims a piece of Wild West history, the last stagecoach robbery in the nation in 1916. Somewhere near those canyons, a bandit stopped a mail coach, right as automobiles and paved highways were about to make stagecoaches obsolete. 16. Cathedral Gorge, the Grand Canyon's pocket-sized cousin. In eastern Nevada, Cathedral Gorge State Park looks like a miniature Grand Canyon built out of clay, with narrow slot canyons carved into soft bentonite and volcanic ash. The formations are so intricate you can wander through three-dimensional mazes of spires and passageways, ducking into tight corridors and popping out into hidden courtyards. Locals half-jokingly say, "Don't tell people about it." They kind of like having this playground mostly to themselves. 15. Nevada's Bottle Green Underground Treasury. Just outside the old boomtown of Goldfield, rockhounds love a place nicknamed the Gem Field, where you can legally collect colorful chalcedony, jasper, agate, and quartz varieties in wild desert colors. It's one of those spots where you kneel down and realize the gravel at your feet is basically a pile of semi-precious stones. Nevada hides value in some very literal ways. 14. Reno's geysers never completely left. Historically, Steamboat Hot Springs south of Reno was one of the largest geyser fields in the U.S., with more than 20 active geysers in the 1800s. Geothermal power development and drought greatly reduced surface eruptions by the 1980s, but the system never died. In the last few years, a new small geyser reemerged near Steamboat, shooting water tens of feet in the air and reminding Reno that its underground plumbing is still very much alive. So yes, Reno still has geysers, just a lot fewer and more temperamental than a century ago. 13. The nuclear crater built for construction. At the Nevada National Security Site, the Sedan crater looks like a meteor hit the desert. In reality, it was part of Operation Plowshare in 1962, an experiment to see if nuclear bombs could be used for massive earth-moving projects like canals and harbors. A 104-kiloton device buried underground blasted out a crater 320 feet deep and 1,280 feet across, throwing 12 million tons of earth into the air. You can't just drive up to it, it's inside a secure nuclear site. But limited tours fill up years in advance, and you're not allowed to bring your own camera. They'll email you the group photo afterwards. Only in Nevada do you need a security clearance to see a man-made hole in the ground. 12. Legal tours of the atomic desert. Those Nevada National Security Site tours don't just show you Sedan Crater. They pass old atmospheric and underground nuclear test locations that help define Cold War history. You're literally riding a bus through a landscape shaped by hundreds of nuclear tests, with strict rules about where you can point your eyes, let alone a camera. The idea that this is a tourist experience at all is peak Nevada. 11. Nevada's last big quake bent the desert. Back to the 2020 Monte Cristo earthquake. Besides cracking US 95, field teams mapped more than 20 centimeters of surface slip along a complex rupture zone with visible ground warping and fresh fault scarps. From the satellite images, you can literally trace new lines across the desert where the crust tore. It's a reminder that Nevada's quiet valleys are sitting on active tectonic chessboards. 10. Nevada's desert is full of ancient art. Beyond Winnemucca and Hidden Cave, Nevada is covered in petroglyph sites. Grimes Point, Grapevine Canyon, Tukwama Cave, Lovelock Cave, and more, where indigenous peoples carved symbols, animals, and stories into rock for thousands of years. Even where interpretations differ, the fact is simple and incredible. You can walk up to rocks in Nevada and see art that may be older than some written languages. 9. The Lovelock Cave. Giant's Legend. Speaking of Lovelock Cave, early 20th century excavations found mummified remains and artifacts in a guano-filled cavern near modern Lovelock. Over time, local stories turned some of those finds into tales of red-haired giants wiped out by indigenous warriors. The giant part is legend, not accepted science. But the fact that Nevada has one of the most famous giant stories in American archaeology is real. And it still pulls curious visitors and conspiracy theories into the desert every year. 8. The road that's also a UFO billboard. State Route 375 in south-central Nevada is officially designated the Extraterrestrial Highway, running past the edge of the restricted airspace that includes infamous Area 51. Small towns along the route lean into the theme with UFO murals, alien-themed cafes, and weird little souvenir shops. Whether you believe in aliens or not, the fact that Nevada has an official state highway named after extraterrestrials tells you everything about its sense of humor. 7. Nevada's caves helped write evolutionary theory as a theory. Places like Gypsum Cave and Hidden Cave preserved fossils and human artifacts so well that scientists use them to test ideas from evolutionary theory. How animals and people responded to climate swings, droughts, and resource changes over thousands of years. You're looking at bat guano, ground sloth dung, and ancient tools that literally helped researchers refine their models of how species might adapt or vanish when ecosystems shift. 6. Nevada's Alps glow with ruby alpenglow. We talked about the Ruby Mountains nickname, but here's the part that feels fake. On certain evenings, especially from places like Spring Creek, the entire crest lights up in deep crimson and pink. Locals swear it looks like someone poured molten ruby on the ridgeline. Mix that with herds of mule deer, mountain goats on cliffs, and alpine lakes, and it's hard to remember you're standing in the driest state in America. 5. Nevada's public land is basically one huge backyard. Because so much of Nevada is public, you can legally wander enormous stretches of open space, camping, off-roading, rock-hounding, hiking, and stargazing on land technically owned by all Americans. It's one of the last places in the lower 48 where you can drive a dirt road for hours, not see a single fence, and know you're still allowed to step out, pitch a tent, and watch the Milky Way explode overhead. 4. The state park people beg you not to overcrowd. Cathedral Gorge again. Some Nevadans are almost hesitant to hype it up, because once you experience its slot canyons, kids climbing through clay hallways, and that surreal eroded skyline, it becomes an instant favorite. It's like a natural playground built out of vertical mud, and the only unbelievable part is how few people around the world know it exists. 3. Nevada's story is written in gold, water, and silence. Between the Comstock silver, the Carlin gold, the hidden aquifers feeding desert springs, and highways so empty they become legends, Nevada's whole identity is this tension between scarcity and abundance. You get too little water, and one freak storm dumps almost a year's worth of rain in a day. You get dry basins, and underneath them, some of the most complex groundwater systems in North America. 2. The desert that still makes new myths. From Burning Man's temporary city and dinosaur shrimp to Area 51 rumors, Lovelock giants and nuclear craters turned into tourist attractions, Nevada might be the best place in America to watch new myths form in real time. The facts we've gone through sound made up, but they're real, and they keep feeding stories that people will still be arguing about 100 years from now. 1. Nevada's human story goes further back than most people realize. Put it all together: Spirit Cave's 10,000-year-old mummy, Winnemucca Lake's 10,500 to 14,800-year-old petroglyphs, wave-carved caves like Hidden Cave, all clustered around Fallon and the old Lahontan shorelines. And you get something mind-bending. For a time, those finds were among the oldest known human remains and rock art on the continent. Nevada, this place people think of as empty, holds some of the deepest evidence of people in North America. That's the real punchline. The middle of nowhere was actually the middle of everything for thousands of years. If you want more wild, actually true stories like this, about states, countries, and the hidden blueprints of how places really work, subscribe to The World Blueprint. Turn on notifications and tell us in the comments which Nevada fact shocked you the most, and which secret spot we should definitely not tell the internet about next. This is Paul. Thanks for watching.